Hello, it's such a pleasure to join you.
Finally. So thank you, and the stage is yours.
Thank you very much. Well, I'm really delighted to be joining you here today, and mostly to say it's fantastic that you've been having this really rich conversation all day about thinking about the application of the donut in your own context. So I'm honored and delighted that this is happening at all. And I know that the focus of the conversations has been around inequalities and how can we use the donut to really address and reduce and tackle inequalities. And of course, that is why the donut exists in the first place. I first drew it when I worked at Oxfam. I was working on social justice and poverty issues. And when I saw the 9 planetary boundaries, it was very clear to me that if we are going to take environmental action to bring ourselves back within planetary boundaries, if we're going to reduce our impact on the planet, we are creating limits. We are limiting ourselves collectively. And as soon as you start to create limits, you raise a question of distribution. It's inevitable. If I told you that in the conference room that you're in right now, there is no more water coming into the room and you're staying there for the next 24 hours, you will immediately look around the room and ask, who has the water? Who is controlling it? And how can we distribute it? So limits inevitably open up questions of distribution. And that's why it's so important to bring together the environmental challenges of the day with the social justice and distributional questions of the day. Otherwise, we see, and we've seen so many times, that when governments introduce an environmental policy like the Gilets jaunes in France, like the nitrogen ceiling in the Netherlands, if you don't follow through on the implications that this is going to have, particularly for people who are already living under tight budgets, you will get a social rebellion. And so we need to devise such policies together, both for social justice reasons, but also for political efficacy reasons. So the donut exactly aims to make sure that we connect environmental integrity and social justice when we make policy. I'm talking at a very high level, of course, but you have been in conversation about the details, which only can really be discussed in a particular place. It makes sense differently in different places. So what I really hope to do today for the next few minutes is give you a sense of how much you're connected to a much bigger global movement, celebration, a creativity burst. So I'm going to just share a few slides with you to let you know how connected in you are. Hang on one moment. And I'm sorry that I've not been able to join you for the full day because I'm sure you've had incredibly rich conversations. So let me come back up here. Here we are. Right. So not only are local governments and municipalities around the world engaging with Doughnut Economics, and I know that's been a lot of the focus of your conversations today, I just want to celebrate that it's also been community groups who have spontaneously chosen to pick up the concept and create their own network groups. As you can see, these ones are from all over the world, some of them the size of a tiny village, some of them like Doughnut Brazil, the size of a massive nation. So people are choosing at very different scales to come together and ask themselves, what would it mean for us here to aim to meet the needs of all people within the means of the living planet? And what I love about these groups that spontaneously form is the creativity. And one of the questions I know we're thinking about today is how can the creative industries be involved? What we can see is the phenomenal playfulness, artistry, and creativity that people are bringing to this. And I think it's really important to bring creativity because we are tackling some of the most challenging issues of the day, tackling poverty, deprivation, and exclusion. We're tackling climate and biodiversity breakdown. And these can be very heavy, very serious issues that, in a sense, can drive people away from them because it's hard to keep focusing on such challenges. But when we turn that around and ask, what are we for? What is the vision we stand here for? Then people bring their playfulness. And it gives me great joy to see the very many different ways that people play with the donut and reinterpret it in a way that also draws in community so that we get beyond the policymaker conversation and actually start having conversations in communities with everyday residents of a place. So community work is incredibly important, and often cities and towns that really go far with this work have both the municipal government engaged, but also the community engaged, and they carry each other and hold each other responsible for moving forwards. It's also happening in schools, and I just wanted to highlight that, of course, where does this awareness and mindset shift start? It often starts in schools. And wouldn't it be incredible if our children, as they go through their education, were taught to think in this far more holistic way? So we at Doughnut Economics Action Lab make many tools for schools, and you're seeing pictures of children in classrooms all over the world here, taking those and taking their own ideas. Oh, it's when teachers bring it into the classroom, and then the kids start having the same conversation with their parents, who are having that conversation at work or in the community, and it all begins to join up. So if anyone is involved in the education system there and thinking about how can we really engage young people, we would love for you to do so through some of the tools and inspirations from others that we've created. You can see in the bottom left-hand corner here a picture of a group of children holding up donuts in a classroom. This is in Amsterdam. And these teachers were volunteer teachers going in on a Friday, and they called it Donut Friday. The children made the donuts themselves. They're very healthy, they're baked, they're not sugary, and they were given one every Friday. And then they took the donut as a concept and said, what is the energy system of our city? And they would go out into the street and start studying the energy systems, interviewing passers-by. So diving in to the very social and ecological issues and the questions of inequality that are at the heart of your conversation. If we can get the kids having that conversation through their education, we start to line up not just the present day policy making, but what's coming through in the future. I also wanted to share that we've created materials for university courses. So again, if anybody says we should get this taught in the universities, because if our city is starting to engage with Doughnut Economics, wouldn't it be incredible if university students were learning about it and also engaging as volunteers, as researchers, as interns in projects? And so on our platform, there are materials on Doughnut Economics for university courses that we've developed and put in the commons, many slide decks, activities, again, bringing this into the educational system of a place so that the new mindset is taking root at many, many levels at the same time. And I also want to recognize that although so much of the work that we do as Doughnut Economics Action Lab and connecting you with the city of Milan, there is also a growing interest at national governmental level and amongst international organizations. And I'm very sure that this is happening because cities like yours are actually starting to make it real. National governments can't ignore it when some of their major cities start engaging in a concept and actually starting policy making and mindset from a very different starting point. So we're seeing a rise in national governmental interest, which is very powerful potentially for the future. And then sectors, right? So whether it's food, which I know is a critical issue in your city, or the built environment, or fashion, or how we build schools themselves, or the road system, people are increasingly using the concept from a sectoral point of view. And again, there's a new tool that we've launched that could make this useful in your context so that we can bring together architects and town planners and future residents and shops and companies around the same table, around the same concept, so that we start to do the holistic planning that we know this work needs. But let me move away from the possibilities and get to the realities that once we get going, sometimes it can feel like we're getting stuck, right? Whether it's a city or a region or a school or a business or a university, all seeking to bring their organization into the donut. Of course, there can be a point where we feel, why aren't we moving faster? When we get stuck by policies or budget cycles and the regulations or global politics and finance, which is so very dominant in the world at the moment, whether there's a lack of funding or a burnout among colleagues or institutional inertia. How do we get past these? And I just want to offer some quotes from very inspiring people around the world that drive us at Doughnut Economics Action Lab, and I hope will help to drive your work in Milan when you hit those moments when you feel you're getting stuck. In this context, we're still called up by journalists who say, well, I want to talk to someone in a place that's really just doing doughnut economics. They're really living in the donut. It doesn't exist yet. Change takes time, especially when you're changing against an incredibly dominant global paradigm. People say, how can you prove this new economy is going to work? We can't prove it's going to work until we start doing it in practice. What we do know, though, what is already being proven, is that the economies we've inherited do not work. They are causing ecological and climate breakdown. They are giving rise to extremes of inequality. This isn't working. So we need to turn in a different direction. And then why isn't it all happening fast? Of course, there is inertia, and of course we want to move faster, but things take time. So I'm inviting you to sit with the feeling of, and things will get stuck, or they do feel stuck. We're not moving fast enough. Who can we take inspiration from here? And I'm going to really reach back through the whole 20th century, actually, because we need to remember that we are part of large-scale paradigm change when we're doing this work, even though we could be in the details of a council meeting. We're bringing about century-long change. So here's some inspirations from people that drive us at Doughnut Economics Action Lab. And the first is the American historian Howard Zinn. He wrote a brilliant book called The People's History of the United States. And he said, the leaps that man has made in social evolution came from those who acted as if they knew they were going to win, as if it was already happening. And for me, I think of these kinds of people who act as if, certainly in the United Kingdom, we think of the suffragettes, the women who campaigned powerfully to get the vote for women and eventually succeeded. But the way they held themselves, the way they marched, the way they engaged with the politicians and with the press, they spoke with a dignity, knowing we're going to win. I don't know how long it's going to take, but we are going to win. We have not come to break the law. We have come to make the law, they would say. So that clarity of the future that you know you are leaning into. Mahatma Gandhi did the same when he was trying to get the British out of India, going on his salt march, the clarity of moving towards a future that we know we can construct. And likewise, these young men in the US, in Greensboro, who sat in at a counter, knowing that they would face severe violence and arrest because there were black men sitting at a counter that was reserved for whites only. But as Martin Luther King Jr. said, the arc of justice may be long, the arc of history may be long, but it bends towards justice. And so knowing that they are taking a step that is towards a future that we can create. So I think it's really important that we take inspiration from these historical figures who at the time were seen as very disruptive, very troublesome. But now we celebrate them in our children's schools and classrooms. We celebrate them in the history books because they were people who had the vision of the future we can create, even though it cuts so hard against the present that we have inherited. So what does it mean for us? Whether it's in my city of Oxford or my country, or you in Italy or in Milan, or people all over the world, what does it mean for us today to act as if we too will succeed? And we know that we will bend the arc towards a regenerative and distributive future. And I invite you to think, what does it mean? How do we hold ourselves? What language do we use? How do we stand up to critique and challenge that this is a dream? How do we hold ourselves towards that future? I want to bring you Shirley Chisholm. She was the first Black woman to be elected the Congress of the United States. So she knows something about inclusion and exclusion and inequality. And she said, if they don't give you a seat at the table, bring a folding chair. I love that. You can bring a folding chair and you can make very different kinds of folding chairs. Your folding chair might be your own festival as you've held today. It could be your own newspaper. It could be finding ways to get your voice involved, making yourself visible so that you do become part of the agenda. And I think what you're doing today clearly is going to be galvanizing interest, galvanizing media attention, building your own festival, bringing your own chair. Milton Friedman, the neoliberal economist who really won the second half of the 20th century and got neoliberalism adopted worldwide through Margaret Thatcher and Ronald Reagan in the 1980s. He said, only a crisis, actual or perceived, produces real change. And when that crisis occurs, the actions that are taken depend on the ideas, that are lying around. Well, Milton won, right? He knew how to change the paradigm. He definitely changed the world's economic paradigm. So we should listen to him. Can we learn from him? And at Doughnut Economics Action Lab, we say, well, why would you want those ideas just lying around in a book, theory on the page? No, we want them up and running in practice as proof of practice. We want to be able to point to places that are already enacting this future. And that's why it's so important for us as an organization to work with people like you, to work with municipalities worldwide that are already figuring out themselves how to put these ideas into practice, because that is far, far more inspiring than ideas on the page of a book. And if, for myself, for having written Doughnut Economics and it came out, Italy was the first foreign language publication. It was the first country I went to when the book was published. So I have a strong affection for that ciambella because it was right there with the book when it was published. So since then, the pickup by governments, by communities has been phenomenal. And I know that it's the practice, the pioneering work that demonstrates to other cities, other mayors, wow, they're quite like us, but they're doing something extraordinary. Maybe we can join in too. So I invite you to remember that every time you put on an event, every time you make a statement about engaging with Doughnut Economics in the policy context, you will be influencing other policymakers in other cities who you don't yet know, but they're watching and they're learning and they're taking inspiration from you. So let's have proof of practice up and running, because we know we face more crises. Climate crises, health crises will come, crises of inequality, forbid it, but crises of war, crises of insecurity are coming. And how will we respond? Who will we be? What will we turn to when those crises come? Will we fall back on old ways and actually entrench ecological breakdown and inequality, or will we turn? And the more that we have positive proof of practice available to ourselves, the more it gives us that possibility of turning towards the new. This is at the heart of our strategy of why we do this work. So where will Milan find itself when crises appear, whether they're citywide or global? How can you position yourself so this becomes the path you take to get out of crisis and emerge from emergency? And then let me finish, no, second last one, this with Ilya Prigogine, the Nobel laureate in chemistry. He said, when a complex system is far from equilibrium, small islands of coherence in a sea of chaos have the capacity to shift the entire system to a higher order. And I think that's what we're doing through the work of Doughnut Economics Action Lab and the community that you are part of. This festival that you've put on today, it is connecting not only with us, my colleague Leonora, who I know has been joining you through the day, and myself. It connects you with other cities. It connects you with other communities. And we start to build a coherence of a positive vision of what we're for. And I must say, it connects us with the well-being economies movement. It connects us with care economy. It connects us with economy for the common good. There are many different ways of expressing this. They are all pointing towards a strongly shared future. How do we connect up and start to show that we are not just an island alone practicing something different, but that we are a part of a wider network that is beginning to emerge with its visibility? So how do we connect up our many small islands? Who are the unlikely people we should be working with? And how do we connect across cities and nations? And that's why I'm delighted to be able to zoom in and connect with you right now to start making that happen. And let me finish with the very wise words of Wangari Maathai, who led the Greenbelt movement, bringing trees and greenery across Kenya and parts of Africa. As she says, throughout my life, I have never stopped to strategize about my next steps. I often just keep walking along through whichever door opens. I've been on a journey, and this journey has never stopped. When that journey is acknowledged and sustained by those I work with, they are a source of inspiration, energy, and encouragement. They are the reasons I keep walking and will keep walking as long as my knees hold out. And this concept of just taking inspiration from others around us, whether they may be our immediate colleagues in the city, whether they're people sitting next to you literally today in this conference, whether they are the inspiration of people we've never met, but across the world are doing something quite like ourselves. It's that solidarity of knowing that there are others trying to bring about change that I think keeps us going on a journey and keeps us going through whichever door opens and following the energy. So for me, this is profoundly inspiring and keeps me doing this work. And I'm so delighted to have this opportunity to join you in your exploration of how Doughnut Economics can be put into practice in Milan. I'm sorry that I don't speak Italian and haven't been able to join you for the whole day, but I'm looking forward to learning from Leonora, who's been with you, but also from the conversation that we can have now. So with that, I hope this brings the bigger picture and a wide and long inspiration for us all to remember that this is hard work and it's long work, but it is the work of our times. And I'm really delighted to be here doing it with you today. Thank you very much.